Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from today. I'm Ricky from Thinking Focus. I'm going to be taking you through mindset shift today and talk you through that. As you can see, I've got my bobble hat on. It's probably about -5 outside. We've had some snow, but I shall remove that. Head's getting too hot. Okay, so today we're going to talk you through all about mindset, how it works, and how you can reframe some of that too. So why don't we dive in? Let's bring the format up for today then, shall we? So firstly, welcome to our webinar. Today we'll be exploring the power of the right mindset and how shifting your mindset can help you get unstuck, unlock performance, and really empower your team. So that's kind of the order of the day. Let's move on to what the plan is, shall we? So the plan is over the next 45 minutes, you will discover two types of mindset, and that's going to help you to identify how best to move forward depending on the mindset that you're thinking about. Learn how your thinking works and understand why you ruminate. What is it that goes on in our heads? How does our thinking work? And we're going to give you some practical tips and help you to manage your team, manage yourself, manage your mindset, and turn that rumination into moving forward, into thinking in a way that moves you forward. And then I'm going to leave some time at the end where we can do some Q&A. We'll be working through your questions, and I'll share a couple that we often get asked, particularly around this. Feel free to drop your comments, questions as we go. Really cool to understand where you're from, what your aim is for the session, really. So any comments in there. If you do have any questions as you go, if you could lead your comment with a cue, that will help me to get to those cues really easy, those questions really easily. So if you're going to put a question in, feel free to do so, but just lead it with a capital Q. That would be really helpful for me in terms of tracking that. At the end, I'm going to share my favorite model. It will help you and your team members to let go, to stop whining, whinging, moaning, and be able to move on. And the great thing is it puts them in control. So that's the order of the day. So hopefully we're going to find some value in here for you and help you to really unlock the power of your mindset. So let's share a little bit about us then, Thinking Focus. We're a behavioral change consultancy. We help people get out of their own way. Whether you want better leaders and managers, whether you want to accelerate change programs, develop high-performing cultures, or boost productivity, we start with metacognition, or as we prefer to say, we help individuals, teams, and business units to be more effective, to understand how they think and unlock their potential. And in the last 8.5 years, we've helped over 160 clients. We've probably worked with over 10,000 participants, and we've delivered over 5,000 hours of coaching all across the world with everything from senior execs through to frontline team members. So we help everybody. Okay, so let's take a look then at some of these phrases. Now, my guess is you've either said a version of these at some point, or you will have almost certainly heard others say these things, whether it's, I can't do this, it's too hard, we're not allowed to do that. Do they not know how hard we're working and now they want us to do this? We've always done it this way. I imagine they are commonplace in your organization. And these might be true, of course, but they're framed as a definitive. It is what it is. But most likely, though, these are urban myths that are holding your organization back. And what I'm interested in is, how do we reframe these? How do we help people to turn this language, this thought process into something that's more empowering, something more powerful for them? And with that, I'd like to start with asking you some questions. What is it you know about mindset? So the way this works is you grab your mobile device or a browser. You can access this through your QR code, or go to slido.com. The access code is TF Mindset. And what I'm interested in is, what is it that you know about mindset? What do you know? What common phrases are you aware of? Oh, it seems, oh, we've got somebody playing along. Brilliant. Yes, absolutely. It's a choice. And this is one of those where you can add more than one comment. So if there's other things, are there types of mindset that you're familiar with? What is it that you know? You might have heard of fixed mindset, growth mindset, things like that. Ah, there we go. I beat you to it, just, but sorry for stealing your thunder. We didn't learn it in MBA school. We didn't learn about mindset when we were doing our MBA. Well, that's really interesting, um, because for us, it doesn't matter what you say, what you do. Your mindset fundamentally will determine whether you're going to hit the heights or not. So you might not have recognized it whilst doing your MBA, but actually you will have a mindset that will be empowering. And look, we've got some great things here. Mindset is a choice. There is such thing as fixed mindset, and the opposite of that is growth mindset. We've got fear of failure. It's a mind over matter. If we think it, we can do it type thing. Past experience absolutely can contribute to this, and I'll share more about that as we go. So all of these things are playing out. Is there any other things you know about mindset before we move on? Oh, one more. So time for one more. Oh, somebody knows everything about mindset. Brilliant. Well, I might lean on you as we get into the process in a little bit more detail. So thank you very much for that. So we've got growth mindset. Absolutely, it's a choice. We've got that a number of times. It's power. Yes, absolutely. Your mindset is your secret weapon. Your team's mindset is your secret weapon. And we'll come on to what that is and why that is. So really appreciate you being contributing to this. This is awesome. So thank you very much. Can be retrained. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk more about some of the elements on that. So just let the last couple come through. Can't be used as a blocker, despite people trying, one would suggest. And we're in control. Absolutely. Some really good. So it seems like you know a lot about this topic of mindset. Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So let's move on. So what I'm going to share with you today is two types of mindset. And really what we're looking at here is either a problem-focused mindset or a solution-focused mindset. So let's share how these mindsets can play out, shall we? So what I want to do is just share with you a little personal example here. So during my corporate career, I led a critical regulator-driven project which had an immovable deadline. It had to be ready for a particular date, non-negotiable. The project demanded immense expertise, resources, and time. And midway through, our CEO decided that if that wasn't enough to have on our plate, we would merge with another similar business at the same time. And we were both going through these same stages. The agreement was that their team, though larger, would follow our model of operation because we were further ahead. Yet they had this army of employees and consultants who resisted. They were clinging to their approach, and understandable when you think about the effort and energy they'd invested in their project already. But instead of focusing on progress, I got stuck. I got stuck in political battles. It drained my energy. It drained my motivation. And I found myself avoiding calls, doubting myself, and really got this fear of failure going on. And then I kind of came to an epiphany. I realized that this wasn't, it was too important to fail. I couldn't let this fail. And certainly my pride wouldn't allow me to let it fail. So I rallied the team, refocused on the shared purpose, which was about hitting the deadline. It was about being customer ready, being business ready for the new regime that we were having to adopt. And I encouraged the team to openly air their frustrations and identify the root issues. And what we identified was outdated governance that was kind of a legacy from the other business, where senior leaders were wanting communication. They were used to having these drips of communication, and they wanted those communications. The problem was we were trying to meet a myriad of different demands from a communication standpoint. So I elevated this as a critical risk. The CEO hired a program manager who could bring it all together, who overhauled the governance, and we created these clear communication channels, streamlined the decision making. And we ended up working together. Now, that's not without its challenges, and it didn't go perfectly, but we found a way to work together to overcome some of those conflicts and deliver the project on time, which we were really tired, but we were really proud of that. But it reinforced to me this power of shifting mindset to overcome obstacles. Now, I could have got caught up in it's all a problem, it's too hard, it's too difficult, but I switched the narrative in my head. I reframed that and looked at how we could do something and create an outcome with colleagues. It wasn't all me, I have to add, but with colleagues that helped us to get to where we needed to get to. So let's unpick these a little bit more then. So in problem focused, you'll probably recognized a problem focused mindset. People spend excessive time and energy complaining about issues, and often without any solution to go with it. They'll create negative work environment, which will lead to low morale. And you'll find they get stuck in analysis paralysis. So rather than making a decision and taking action, testing and see whether it works, they would probably hold back and they would not get stuck into that. And that's played out in terms of how they resist change, they resist new ideas, and they focus on continually highlighting problems. And that often means that others around them become less productive because they get weighed down by this negative influence that's around them. And then in contrast, your team members who show a solution-focused mindset, well, you'll see them taking initiative to solve problems rather than just pointing them out. And that boosts productivity because as they address these issues directly, they just get stuck in, they make stuff happen. And your culture, your team culture becomes a place people enjoy working in and they want to be a part of. You'll find that solution-focused mindsets become much more adaptable to change and will embrace challenges. And your people find that developing new skills, these problem-solving and decision-making skills often follow with a solution-focused mindset because this is about finding the way forward, right? And of course, there are business benefits that play out here as well. So particularly with a solution-focused mindset, people feel empowered to get on with it. They don't wait, they just get on with it. It almost lets do something and seek forgiveness as opposed to wait to be told, wait to address it. So things get resolved quicker, issues and obstacles get resolved faster, much more engaged in the way they go about that. Teams find new ways to collaborate particularly for the greater good, leading to innovation and creative problem solving. And your customers benefit too, because the team proactively address their concerns. They find things that are not working and go fix them. And that will play out in terms of this stronger leadership pipeline that will emerge, because you've got people who are making stuff happen. These are exactly the sort of people that you want leading teams of the future and leading your organization. And when you think about it, these are just a few of the benefits, which begs the question, why do we allow problem-focused mindsets to pervade? Why don't we tackle them head on? Is it a lack of confidence? Is it a lack of skills? Or maybe it's a bit of both? But one thing's for sure, that if we tolerate a problem-focused mindset, it's bad for individuals, it's bad for teams, and it's bad for business. So let's move on then. So let's think about how we think. Let's talk about that in a bit more detail. So before we dive into this, I think it's important just to recognize that we're all prone to both mindsets. And this can be situational. Some situations bring out the best in us, some bring out the worst in us. But the secret is, with being problem focused, is to ask, how long do you want to feel this way before moving forward? Because people can end up in a pity party. They can end up feeling sorry for themselves. But fundamentally, how long do they want to feel like that before moving on? Our thinking leads to actions. Our actions will lead to an outcome, a result, and that may be the result that we want. And for the most part, this works fine. In fact, what you'll find is, over time, our thought patterns become automated. We end up with this automaticity. They find their way into your subconscious, and when they do, things just happen. And that's all well and good when these automations are serving you well. But just imagine if every time you walked up to a door, you had to think about how to open it. That would be really frustrating, really time consuming, and very intensive in terms of brain power, which is why your brain finds ways to automate these things. And think about when you drive to work, for example, assuming that you do these days, given the nature of work as it is now, but you'll find yourself listening to the radio. You might make a call. You might talk to a passenger that you've picked up along the way, if you're lift sharing, for example. But when you turn up to your destination, you've got this sense of, how did I get here? Well, that's automaticity in action. That's where these little processes have been created to make life much lighter on us from a cognitive standpoint. And there are million examples of these things. But of course, the problem comes when our thinking does not deliver the desired results. We have a choice, and we talked about that in terms of what we know about mindset. Absolutely. We have a choice to think differently. But what more commonly happens is we keep doing the same thing. We convince ourselves that this will work next time. We convince ourselves, if we try it again, or just do it slightly differently, or do it in a subtly different way, that will create the outcome that we want. When actually what we really need to do is we need to think differently. Now, when we work with organizations, when we work with teams, we run an exercise to illustrate this. We tie people up. And many of you who are on this call are probably smiling, because you may well have done this exercise, and I'm sure that you know who you are. But we tie them up, we join them together and ask them to get out of it. And we only give 3 rules, but the rules are innocuous, but they set a cognitive frame for participants. Now, I must have run this exercise over 1,000 times, and it never ceases to amaze me how many times participants repeat the same action from each other's perspective. And when it doesn't work, they go, hang on a minute, why don't we try it from your perspective? And of course, it's a mirror image, so they end up basically doing the same thing from the other person's perspective, and they end up back where they started. We also see them make up all sorts of additional rules that were never mentioned at the start. So, most believe it's competitive. Most insist on diving in before I've even finished the briefing. And most go straight into action. They start strictly come rope dancing as they're moving all around, which is quite humorous, but really we don't care whether they solve the problem, the puzzle. What we do care about is how they think. We care about, what has gone through their mind, what has gone through their thought processes in order to make them take the actions and get the results that they've talked about. So let's unpick that a little bit more, shall we? So what is happening? Well, when we think, we ask questions. And those questions might be about ourselves, they might be about the situation. But we say things in our heads. We might even say them out loud, by the way, but that might be reference to ourselves or the situation in the same sort of way. And that situation might include what others are doing or saying that triggers a thought within us. It might trigger many thoughts, by the way. And those thoughts will play out in one of two ways. They'll either play out in a helpful thought, something that moves us forward, or it might play out in an unhelpful thought, something that holds us back. And again, referring back to the Slido word cloud that we did at the start, our thinking is on a timeline. So we might draw from the past where we've been in that experience. Often when we do the rope exercise, there are people that remember being tied up in whatever form, shape, I'm not so sure, but they end up feeling like they've been there before in terms of being tied up. So we remember what's gone before. We also spend some time in the present. So what is going on? What's happening right now? The problem, though, is the present typically lasts no more than 3 seconds. So it's kind of either gone and it's now in the past. So we need to be present when we're doing these things. But we also project forward. We start to imagine how things play out. We start to think about what does the future entail here? And this timeline becomes connected, and we may think about, when we think about what's happened before, that might lead us to paint a picture of what might be. Particularly in organizational change, for example, the last time we went through this, that starts to form the way we think about the future, given this new change or this new restructure that we're going through. We may imagine something happening, and that might trigger a memory. So we start talking about the future in terms of this change project, as an example, but actually we go backwards and we spend a lot of time thinking about last time, and that wasn't fair, and this happened and that. And both will trigger thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and they will cause us to react in a particular way. And those reactions are influenced by whether they're helpful thoughts, where we see these as opportunity and potential, or if our thoughts are unhelpful, that might trigger us to catastrophize, to imagine the worst. And we're more likely to see that because we're wired that way. We exist because our ancestors learnt to work out where the dangers were in those days of tigers and lions, and they had to kind of work in and amongst those day in, day out as they searched for food. So we are wired for negativity. We are wired to protect ourselves. So that's why we're often looking at these things in catastrophe or imagining the worst. And that all wraps together, and this starts to form the stories that we tell ourselves. And often those stories are made up. We fill in the blanks. We fill in the blanks with what we feel makes sense, what feels familiar, in order to make the sense of the story. We love certainty. We hate uncertainty as human beings. So let's think for a moment about two different cultures. We've got a learning culture where people feel safe, knowing that their boss and colleagues have their backs. Failure is seen as an opportunity to learn and to grow. Now think about the opposite of that, a blame culture, one where everyone is out for themselves, mistakes happen, nobody speaks up, and we're fearful that we may be blamed, or worse, we're going to get fired. The reality, though, is these cultures mix together, and they're often line manager dependent, certainly in some of the experiences I've had. Good managers, well, they'll look for learning and growth. Poor managers will seek to protect themselves first and foremost, and may even throw their team members under the bus if it means they look after themselves. And I look back when I was in these kind of roles, and when I reflect, I recognize that I've done both. I've been a good boss and I've been a poor boss. Some of that's down to my lack of maturity and my lack of confidence as a manager. And a lot was down to the manager that I reported to. If I felt like they had my back, I was more likely to behave in that way. Because, let's face it, it takes real strength of character to behave differently to your boss, especially when treating mistakes as learning, when those around you want answers, they want consequences, and they want it sorted like yesterday. So all of that is going to play out in terms of the narrative, the story that we create in our heads, particularly when things don't go to plan. And it's no wonder that our thoughts are always a mix of unhelpful and helpful. The secret is encouraging the helpful, but allowing the unhelpful thoughts to surface so that you can make some choices about what to do with them. We talked about that again in terms of what you guys know about mindset, and that's absolutely true. We have a choice here. What do we do about it? And this is powerful when you do it for yourself, but when you do it with teams, it can be like turning on a turbo as you release the blockages. And you can unlock huge potential when you create an environment where people can freely externalize their thoughts. Now, I'd like to caveat that by going, I don't mean moaning and whining. This is not a pity party. This is not a free for all. It is about doing that in a controlled and accountable way. So you get to moan, but you also get to decide what we do about that. You get to own a way forward. So this is not you get to moan without consequence. There is some expectation that having said what you've said, we're going to do something with it. So when you think about helpful thinking, things that are moving us forward, and when you think about unhelpful thinking, what I'm really interested in, I want to go back to the Slido, and assuming you've not come off it, it should still be there for you. Thinking about your team. Now, this could be a team you lead. It could be a team you're a part of or have recently been a part of. What percentage of unhelpful thinking do you see? So just throw some numbers at me. Again, it's a word cloud, so it'll fill out. Is it low? Is it high? Is it medium? What's the number of what's the percentage that you would put against this? Oh, we've got 2 people joining in. Wow. Any more for any more? 25%? 10%? Roughly? 20%. And yes, it does depend on the day. It depends on the environment. It depends on what's happened. It can be absolutely situational. But if you look at these numbers and you go, okay, you've got a range here from as low as 10% up to around 70%. What we know is that it ain't zero and it ain't 100%, and that's absolutely fine. But the point here is, at best, we've got room for improvement by as much as 10%, and we've got this massive opportunity if we are generally weighed down with unhelpful thinking at around 70%. So there's a huge opportunity here for us to clear away some of the baggage, clear away some of these unhelpful thoughts, and move us forward. So I want to get into that next. So thank you again. Thank you for contributing. I'm assuming that the 60-70% is 60-70%, not 6,070%. And yes, thank you for that last one. Depends on seniority too. Yes. Not all thinking is helpful just because we're senior. In the same way, not all thinking is unhelpful just because we're senior. We're all susceptible to helpful and unhelpful thinking, and that will impact our mindset, whether we become predominantly problem focused or solution focused. So thank you very much for that. So let's go through a 3-step process on how to manage your mindset. So I've also got some a mindset toolkit, which I'll share with you as we get towards the end here. But how you manage your mindset? Well, step one is all about venting. This is the first step in the process. We capture our thoughts, good, bad, and indifferent. So let's capture the fact that not everything's bad and not everything's good, but actually there's some in between as well. But let's capture those thoughts. I typically like post-its because in the next stage you can move them around. But even if you write a list, even if you get this on paper externalized, whether it's a flip chart or whatever it might be. So here, this is just basically grab a piece of paper, some post-its and a pen, and either do it for yourself or get your team to do that. So get all of the thinking out on paper. Don't judge anything at this stage. That leads us to step 2. And step 2 is about categorization. And we love a 2x2 box here at Thinking Focus. And what we're really looking to do here is place your thoughts in the appropriate box. So in the top right, these are things that are moving you forward and are in your control. Bottom right, they're moving you forward, but they're outside your control. Top left, holding you back, but are inside your control. And bottom left, they're holding you back and they're outside your control. So if we work that back then, so what do we do then? So bottom left, these are holding you back, but you can't do anything. So it's time to let them go. There's no point holding baggage that is outside your sphere of control. So it's time to let it go. I would normally burst into song here in terms of the Disney Frozen movie, but sadly, A, my voice won't stand it, and B, you wouldn't want to hear that anyway. So I'm gonna protect you from that debacle there. Bottom right, this is about being grateful. These things are helping you and moving you forward, but they're outside your control. So let's not fight them. Let's embrace them and let's be thankful we've got things working in our favor. Top right, well, this is about keep them going. Keep making these things happen because these are working for you. So this thinking is really moving you forward. And then we've got top left. So these are thoughts that you can choose to do something about because they're in your control. And like I said before, I love post-its because you can move these around and depend on, well, actually, I think that's that and that's this, and that's absolutely fine. So you can move them around. But I think one thing to be aware of is if you're doing this in a team perspective, is that I might write something on one of my post-its and the group might perceive that to be helpful when in actual fact it's unhelpful, because my tone of thinking, my tone of voice in my head will determine whether what I've said is actually helpful or unhelpful. And we might misjudge that. So it's important to qualify whether these things are in the right place with your teams. So when we think, this tone of voice can sway our emotions. So others might perceive it to be good when actually you think it's not so good. So just be mindful of that. So once we've categorized, the next thing to do is we need to do something about it. And this is about where we reframe, where we resolve our unhelpful thoughts. So the final step in this process doesn't mean simply going from I can't, therefore I can. What it does mean is if you were to reframe your unhelpful thoughts, turn them into a question. Our brains love questions. If you ask one, you'll be amazed that your brain will just go off looking for the answer. And I bet at some point or another, you've all woken up in the middle of the night with a eureka moment. You feel like you've got this way forward. It might be something you've misplaced. It could be a problem that's been bothering you at work and you've suddenly found a way forward. That's your subconscious effectively delivering a result of the work it's been doing to find an answer for you. Now, it may be inconvenient that it comes in the middle of the night, but your brain's done its job. It's gone looking for an answer. And I've got a few examples here for you. In these examples, you can see I've not simply flipped them from I can't to I can, but what we've tried to do here is to go, how do we reframe that in a question, enabling us to be more solution focused? Because there's no point kidding myself that I can't do it, and therefore if I just say I can, because we just don't believe that. But what you can do at this point is take those questions that we've got down the right hand side and engage the 20 idea method. Now, this is a highly creative way to find helpful ways forward. Try and generate 20 ideas to your question, and I will guarantee you'll find something that will either trigger another idea or it will move you forward. But of course, you might pick the wrong question. That's okay, because we get to go again. We can reframe another question. It's like coaching. If you've ever coached anybody and you ask a question, it just doesn't land, then you rephrase it and you go with an entirely new one. So you get to ask the question again. And I promised you at the very beginning my favorite model. So what happens when you or your team member is stuck? They just can't seem to let go of something. And actually, it might be turning a little toxic. Well, that might be their performance that's being impacted. It could be those around them that are being affected. So this tool, which I kind of frame it as Mr. Sadface, my colleagues call it Ricky, but it's an immensely powerful one. And I've used it countless times when coaching execs through to frontline team members. And I love it because it's simple, it puts the other person in charge, and it just works. So here's how it works. So basically, in any situation, you've got 4 choices. And the choices are effectively a series of questions that says, can you change it? Can you change the situation? Can you change the decision? And for the majority of us, typically, the answer to that will be no. Can we be a part of it? So in other words, can we change our attitude towards it, whatever it is? That could be the decision. It could be the situation that's going on. And this takes a 180 shift here. So we go from we're really against it to actually, how can we be a part of this? How can we embrace it? How can we start to shape it and get really immersed within it? And often people go, no, I can't do that. So then you've got the next option, which is escape it. And escape it can mean a whole myriad of things. It could be you leave the project. It could be you leave the team. It could be you go and do something different. And that could be all within the same organization. And at its extreme, it could be you leave the business, you leave the organization. But of course, when that becomes something that's on the table, we've all got responsibilities, whether that be our family, our mortgage, our livelihood is now in question or in threat. And therefore, often people go, well, no, can't do that. So essentially, you end up in last chance saloon, as we call it. It's not technically last chance, but this is the last choice available to you. So the question is, can you live with it? And what living with it means is sumo, shut up and move on. We don't want to hear any more complaining, any more whining, any more whinging. This is time to embrace it and move on, in terms of you are accepting it is the way it is. Not, you don't have to like it, but you're accepting the way it is. And often what we find when we use this tool is that the individual will land somewhere between live with it escape it and be a part of it. They will oscillate between each of those, and more often will either live with it in the main, or they might actually go, you know what, I'm being silly, let's get on with this, let's make it happen and be a part of it. But like I said, the power in this is the individual is in control. It's not, all I'm doing is asking the questions and providing a mirror that says, this is what's happening. This is what you need to think about. Okay, so any questions that we've got, because we're coming towards the end now, which gives you an opportunity to ask me some questions should you choose to. Drop them in the comments for me, that'd be awesome. While you're having a ponder, there is there's a couple of questions that we get asked. Thank you, Kelly, by the way. There's a couple of questions that we get asked. Some people seem happy being problem focused. They almost enjoy being negative. What do you do with them? Well, in my experience, these are solutions waiting to happen. And the question is, how do we engage them? How do we listen to them? And how do we empower them to come up with some answers? So they don't just get to moan. What they do is they get to go, well, how would you fix it? What would you do? What's the ideal solution? How might that play out? So I think the answer, when you've got somebody who is problem focused and enjoys it or seems to enjoy it, these actually could be the canary in the coal mine that's telling you something's wrong. So don't just dismiss somebody who appears to be problem focused, but look at them in terms of what value are they trying to add here? How can we get through the mindset that appears to be problem focused when actually are they in reality trying to work it out? I've got a question here. At what point does the unhappy face become conduct? Thank you, Lindsay. It's a brilliant question. And actually, we do have people that just don't want to change. And I think, again, step one is, have we truly listened to them? If we can look them in the eye and go, we've given them every opportunity to work this through. Have we given them the opportunity to be a part of finding some solutions? Because clearly there's a frustration here. But at some point, we do have to recognize that sometimes it's not right for whatever reason. Doesn't make them a bad person, but sometimes we have to effectively hold the mirror up and go, this is unacceptable. And clearly you would do this with your HR team. This is not something I would embark on alone, but I would engage with my HR team to work out, is it conduct? Is it capability? Is it something we're missing? And how can we help them? So great question, Lindsay. Hope that helps. So what we got, does environment, media, background exposure impact others' mindsets? Can it also be a solution? Yes and yes, absolutely. I think this comes back to what we said at the very outset, particularly in that first slide about what we know. Mindset is a choice. It's really easy to allow what's going on to either condition us into thinking the world is dreadful and it's all problematic, or we can go, right, what's within our sphere of influence, what's within our sphere of control, and how do we embrace those things and make an impact? And I said earlier that certainty is something that we are conditioned to look for as human beings. And I think that is crucial, is own the things you can own, do something about the things that you can do something about. And if you can't do anything, ignore it, leave it, because that's not going to help you sweating stuff that you just can't make a difference to, make a change to. So thank you for that, Naomi. We've got Kelly. At what point do we determine a problem-focused individual is not willing to shift to solution-focused, and we need to let them go? I think we've kind of picked that up in terms of the question that Kelly answered. Again, follow that process. Are we in this? Are we doing the right things by the individual? Are we giving them every opportunity? And at the end of the day, they've got to show up with the right mindset. How do you shift from reactive to proactive as a manager? Excuse me, my voice is starting to give up now. I think this is really about helping people to think in that future focused approach. It's getting them to work out what is it that they want to have, what is it they want to become, what is the problem that's occupying their mind, and how do we find a way forward for that? And I would start to engage in creative thinking. I'd use the 20 idea method. I'd frame the problem as a potential question that is focused on an outcome we want, and I would work through it in that way. So they come up with creative ideas, and then if they pick one and it's doable, let's back them. It might not be the idea we want, but let's back them and give them an opportunity to make an impact. Okay, thank you for those questions. Just a couple more things to share. So coming up in December, next webinar is all about trust. So this is about the secret to high performing teams, what it is, why it's important, how to build trust in the workplace. So look out for, sorry, Lindsay, still got your comment on there. So look out for this coming up in December. Anybody who's registered, anybody who's logged in terms of the LinkedIn registration process, I will make sure that you're aware of the upcoming opportunity to join the next webinar. So feel free to do that. We've got loads available beyond what we do with our clients. So we've got our LinkedIn page, Thinking Focus. We've got our newsletter, which provides monthly insight, guidance, tips and tools for leaders and managers. And we've got our Thinking Focus YouTube channel. We've just gone through 1 million views and 100,000 subscribers. So I'm really excited by that. So if you're part of that audience, I really appreciate your support, because that's made all the difference to us in terms of making our content widely available. And then I'm going to make this available for you, which is the Thinking Focus mindset toolkit. So there's a link here, and again, I will share this with everybody who's registered, but you can access the tool set that we've got here. So whether it being the categorization, the resolving unhelpful thoughts, Mr. Sadface, or Ricky as he's known, and the 20 idea method. So feel free to access that, lock into that in terms of an opportunity. It's an online flip book, but you can also download it as a PDF should you choose to. I wonder if I can, no, can't take that and drop it in the comments for you, sorry. And then, so there's a toolkit for you, and then that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time. Really enjoyed sharing some of this valuable content with you. Feel free to reach out. You've got contact details in terms of getting in touch with us. So feel free to do that. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much. And I wish you a brilliant end to your week. Thank you very much.